Do you know what the Carbon engine is? Because I sure don't. But I do know one thing. It keeps popping up all over the place. If you watch the latest limited run games showcase, you would see that there are a ton of games coming to modern platforms, retro games, via the Carbon engine. It's the biggest new thing in retro gaming, bringing retro experiences to the forefront of modern platforms. And I thought to myself, you know, I don't know what this is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's about, but I do know the man behind it, and that is my favorite Englishman, Modern Vintage Gamer. So I thought, hey, why don't I ask some questions, and that way we could break down what this is, because obviously there's a ton of games coming from a ton of platforms, and it just seems like this could be potentially the start of things. So I want to get in before it becomes a trend. MVG, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks for having me on, and I'm happy to talk the Carbon engine with you. In fact, I will say that you've mentioned the Carbon engine to me many times before, so I'm happy to kind of fill you in on what the dealio is with this stuff.
All right, cool. Because yeah, like I feel like myself and a lot of people who aren't quite as tech savvy, like to me, I just see all these, because obviously during the limited run presentation, there were multiple platforms that are coming via the Carbon engine. We've got stuff from the Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom technically, with the Clock Tower game. We have stuff from the PlayStation 1 era. So what is actually this thing? And I guess what are like the capabilities of it, and what are like the limits of it as far as systems are concerned?
Well, that is really, I'm glad you asked that question. So you kind of already answered it, but I will give you my my answer as well. So the Carbon engine is basically, look, at its truest form, it's a piece of software that allows you to bring back retro games, right, for modern consoles. So there's really nothing special about that in of itself, but what it's really good at doing is it's kind of like a modular plug and play type approach where, and we started out the Carbon engine all the way back in 2019, and we brought Shantae to the Switch, and that was our first Carbon engine release, and that was just running Game Boy Color. So since then we add what we call engines to the Carbon engine, and so we start to add additional hardware over time. So when we did River City Girls a couple of years ago with Way Forward, we added Super NES, right? And now you kind of mentioned as well, we have slowly started to incorporate things like PlayStation 1. We're looking at like 32-bit systems, right? So we've got PlayStation 1 in there. So in its simplest form, it's really just software that brings back all retro games. There's nothing really special about it in of itself. But I think what makes it interesting is that many gamers out there don't want to mess around, and you may not like this answer as the emulation king, but many gamers out there don't like to mess with emulation and ROMs and stuff like that, right? So because number one, there's all this gray area with legalities and stuff like that, and number two, some people just don't even know how to run an emulator. So what we do with the Carbon engine essentially is we just minimize that barrier of entry, and we just provide the product to the customer in an ecosystem that they're already invested in, and it's a safe and kind of legal way to enjoy old retro games on, like I said, on modern consoles like the Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox.
No, I mean, it's a brilliant thing, because yes, there are tons of people who don't want to mess around with emulation, and I honestly was one of those people until a couple of months ago, because I didn't you have to actually invest time into learning things about this, because me today is me versus me 6 months ago, completely different thing. I couldn't tell you anything 6 months ago, and now I'm like, oh yeah, you got to use a Vulkan backend instead of OpenGL internal upscale, like mumbo jumbo like that. Now, are you handling the Jurassic Park collection as well?
I am. In fact, I'm the lead developer on that project, and I will say I'm pretty psyched about that one. That's a good project to work on.
So that has Genesis, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo, correct?
It only has the Game Boy, NES, and Super NES. There is no Genesis.
Okay. I didn't know that, but okay, that's cool. Right. But yeah, that's 3 more platforms. Have you done anything with the Genesis, or are you planning on any Genesis related stuff?
We have Genesis support in the Carbon engine, and there are games that are currently in the works, which I can't reveal right now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Unfortunately, but we love the Genesis. We're big fans of it, and you know, Genesis fans, Sega fans, there is stuff coming down the pipe. So yeah, stay tuned.
So obviously this is starting to grow as well. I mean, you're working with huge IPs, you're working with huge companies. I guess one of my questions is because it's essentially an emulator built for a modern platform, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good way to describe it. But I guess the difference is that, you know, like I said, I kind of touched on before that anyone can just download the ROM and an emulator and play it, right, and relive that experience. But one of the things that we like to do with the Carbon engine is offer that curated and enjoyable user experience. So we're going to modernize the game to kind of suit, you know, modern control standards. We're going to also make it more than just about the game. So I may get in trouble for saying this, but for Jurassic Park, you know, we've got some plans for like extras and things, you know, that we're adding. Like, because the games themselves, Jurassic Park, I mean, the Super NES games, I kind of like them because I have nostalgia, but a lot of people don't, right? And I get that. It's kind of polarizing. So we kind of add in like extras, art galleries, you know, music players, just kind of whatever we can find to also kind of complement the game itself. So, and you know, ultimately that's kind of what we're trying to do. And we offer these kind of these games as a way for our partners that had all these games that came out in the 90s and the early 2000s, for example, a really easy way for them to kind of just redistribute legacy content, because a lot of these partners that we work with, like Sunsoft, for example, they want to bring these old games back because they have a really good back catalog, right? But a lot of the times they don't really have the resources to do it. So we kind of just take that off their hands, if you will, and say, look, we'll do it for you because we have an engine that will handle this for you guys. So it's kind of low risk for our partners, if that makes sense. And you know, so we and as like retro game enthusiasts like myself, I love doing this kind of work. So it's kind of win-win all around.
Have you ran into anything like a specific game that you're like, okay, we can't do it, like it doesn't run as it should, or anything like that? Because I don't know if that's a logical question or anything like that, but a game that's maybe like too hard for the system to run, essentially, because I'm guessing it has to be like an emulator is somewhat built into the game itself.
Right. So there are, we haven't, but I will say this, we have been approached by partners and have offered, hey, is this game, you know, we'd love to see this game on the Carbon engine. Is it possible, right? And in a situation where if we don't have that engine available, or it's not on our kind of roadmap, then we simply can't do it, right? So, and as a good example of this, PlayStation 1 is a good example, because 12 months ago, we didn't have a PlayStation 1 engine that we could use. So it was something that, you know, as we kind of work on these things, and usually we work on the engines as the need arises. So for example, if a partner says, hey, we want to bring back game X, and we don't have that engine, but we feel strongly that we should actually, you know, do the work for it and make it happen, then we will. But I don't think there's a specific game with the engines that we have that we've had to turn back and say, no, we can't do that for XYZ technical reasons.
Okay. And I guess another thing that I want to ask is, obviously, as this continues to grow, you're going to get more and more stuff on your plate when it comes to companies, when it comes to people wanting to work with you. Where do you see this in, say, 12 months? Like, do you see it continuing to grow? And if so, I guess, how are you going to be able to keep up with the potential demand for this?
Yeah, so it will continue to grow, and we've already got a lot of interest from partners. We've already got a lot of work in the pipe that we're currently developing. And I think the way that I see this going is we just need to scale up our resources. So right now we have a team. There's 6 people that work on the Carbon engine team. which is good for the amount of work that we have right now. And we also have outside partners that we work with as well. I should mention that too. But it's probably something that we want to kind of, maybe, ramp up on resources and have different teams working on different things. And we're slowly starting to get into that right now. But I would expect that as the work kind of gets more and more, then we will start to, try to manage that with more resources, I think is the move.
And Sega Saturn, are you gonna have Sega Saturn eventually? Maybe.
As a Sega Saturn fan, a very big one, as you know, I personally would love it to happen. We don't support it yet, but hopefully there will be the need where we do support it in the future. That's all I can really say. But yeah, I love the Saturn, so I'd love to see some Saturn stuff. Would be
a little bit tricky though. Okay, so I guess my final thing would be, if you could personally pick one game to bring to the Carbon Engine, what would it be and why?
So I've always said Chrono Trigger, because it's probably my favorite RPG of all time. I'd want to be very meticulous and very careful about how we did it. I think we wouldn't mess with the game in any shape or form, but it would be something that I would consider like a love letter to fans of Chrono Trigger, where we basically just give it the the Atari 50 style, where we just add so many extras to that game and so many really cool and unique things that fans haven't experienced before. But I wouldn't necessarily touch the actual game itself too much. I think when you start to mess around with the internals of a game itself, that's when you potentially start to lose people. Or we could potentially add, the original version and then have what I would say an enhanced version. But for me, Chrono Trigger would be the move. And since you asked that question, I have to ask you, because we take questions. People ask us, what about this? What about that? What do you want to see on the Carbon Engine? I can certainly make a note of it. I'm not saying it's anything that we can do, but we can certainly, see what happens. So what are your games that you'd like to see personally?
I wasn't prepared for this. No, I mean, I obviously would love to see some Saturn stuff, just because I know Sega is ridiculous with certain IPs as far as how much they demand, because I've talked to people about arcade 1-up stuff and they're telling me dollar amounts and I'm just like, what? Like, that's crazy. I would love to see some Saturn stuff though, just because I feel like it's probably the most underutilized retro system out of everything. Even Atari 2600 and 5200 games get re-released with like the Atari 50th collection, but you never see anything from the Saturn. So I mean, just anything. I love the third-party games on there, like Enemy Zero. I love the first-party games on there, of course, but yeah, I would go with Saturn.
Yeah, Saturn's definitely a favorite of mine. And like I said, if there is a way for us to do it, I will push hard to do it. So you're in good hands, Sean.
Sega,
we'll try to make it happen.
I know you're listening, Sega. Do the deal. Sign the paperwork. Get this done. All right, so this was a very enjoyable conversation. I feel more enlightened on what the Carbon Engine is, and hopefully everyone else in the comments and that is listening and watching this video also feels that way. MBG, where can we find you? Where's the best place to follow all your projects?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Modern Vintage G. That's where I'm kind of most active. I've got a Threads account, but I never use it. But I'm Modern Vintage Gamer on Threads if that's what you prefer. And of course, I have a YouTube channel, Modern Vintage Gamer. I do a video at least once a week on a Monday, maybe a midweek video as well. And you can find me on the Spawncast every Saturday night on the Spawncast as well.
And you can find him on patreon.com/Spawncast to give us
the Spawncast Network. That's right.
Spawncast Network. He's got Ask a Developer. I've got a Nintendo discussion with Nate and Josie Woe. It's good times.
Yep.
Good times. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck and good success with all of this stuff. Even though I talk to you every day, I got to act like, we're kind of strangers a little bit. But good luck with everything, and I'll catch up with you another day.
Thank you.
All right. See ya, everyone.